Welcome back to the Build Beyond podcast. For this episode, I'm going to share a patient story. I will change enough of the details about this patient so I can protect this person's identity. But I think that the conversations that we've had recently, I think they'll be valuable because I think the things that this person has said to me recently reflect a lot of the beliefs and the concerns that I feel like a lot of people share. A lot of people can resonate with this. So this person, let's see, he is let's say he's in his mid-50s, and he's not coming to me so much for pain or injury. He's dealing with pain and he's dealing with injuries, but he's trying to get active again, and he's struggling because there's so many different things going on in his life. So this gentleman, he used to be an athlete back in the day when he was younger, multi-sport athlete, but now he's struggling with weight gain. He's struggling with blood sugar issues. He's concerned about heart health. He's had multiple surgeries over the years, orthopedic surgeries and other types of surgery. He's dealing with a hormone issue, a legitimate hormone issue that he's having treated by a physician, and things hurt, and he doesn't feel like he's on the right track. He doesn't feel healthy. He doesn't feel active. And like most people, as we age, we start to realize that we don't have as much time left as we think we did when we were younger. And I can attest to that. I'm in my mid-40s, so I'm still relatively young, but even in my mid-40s, you know, I don't know how much time I have left. I hope I have another 40, 50 years, but I might not. So you start to think about maximizing that time. And then if you're kicking that can down the road as far as it goes with disease or injury or being inactive or immobile. So this gentleman has some legitimate concerns, and I had him in the gym, and he lacked a lot of capabilities. So for example, he really struggled to take a knee and then get back up. Partially had to do with some knee pain, but there was also really tight hips, very weak, just struggled to take a knee. I had another opportunity to work with him, and I said, look, I want you to lie down on your back because we're going to do a couple exercises. And he couldn't do it. I mean, not without help. So we actually had to use a bench because he was worried about, without help, getting down to the floor onto his back and then being able to get back up. So we were able to do the exercises on a bench, but even then that was a struggle. So we're talking about a person who, if he were to slip and fall and no one was around and he couldn't get to a wall or a chair or something to pull himself up, he might legitimately be stuck like a turtle flipped over until someone finds him. Same gentleman, if he's moving around and he has to go pick something up and he has to take a knee, there's a legitimate concern if he can't grab onto something and pull himself up, he might not be able to get back up off the ground. That's not a good spot to be in, and to his credit, he realized this, and that's why he's trying to change things. And that's really not the topic of this podcast. I'm just trying to set the scene. So now you can picture this gentleman. Maybe this accurately represents you or someone you know, or there's bits and pieces of this that that resonate with you. So we're in the gym, we're working. He's actually doing quite well. And we're working on technique on an exercise. And he's responding really well. A very coachable person. And he goes, I'm really, so something to the effect of that he's excited to work on technique because I'm not quoting him exactly, but I'm going to get as close as I can. There's nothing worse than having bad technique in the gym. And I stopped and I said, I can think of something worse. And he goes, what? I said, not going to the gym at all. And he laughed and shrugged his shoulders and he goes, yeah, I guess so. This idea is, I understand where it comes from, but I think it hits at a key hurdle, a key barrier that prevents a lot of people from taking action. Because if you ask 100 people, is exercise good for you? You're going to get 100 yeses. And most of those people aren't exercising. So we know it's good for us, but we don't do it. So we have a bunch of barriers and a bunch of hurdles and a bunch of things that are getting in our way. And a lot of those are psychological, to be fair. And this idea that there's nothing worse than bad technique, I think that is a barrier. It's a barrier for a lot of people. So we think about good technique and bad technique as this like false dichotomy. So visualize a vertical line. So it's going north to south, running right down the middle. On the left-hand side of the line, you have bad technique. And on the right-hand side of the line, you have good technique. Well, if you only have two choices and you don't do something regularly or you haven't done it a long time, you definitely won't have good technique. So your only other option then is bad technique. And if we have it in our mind that there's nothing worse than bad technique, well, then how do you get started? You know? Because you have to be bad at something for quite some time before you can be at least decent at it. And I think this all or nothing mentality is again, it's logical, I understand it, but it prevents people from moving. So what I would challenge you to do is, rather than have this vertical line that runs north-south, let's have a horizontal line that runs east-west. And instead of saying good technique and bad technique, let's say like less optimal technique and more optimal. So for any exercise on any given day, you're somewhere on that line. Regardless of where you are on the line, we can train. If you're at that less optimal end, so maybe your range of motion isn't great, you don't really understand the exercise, you're weak, you're uncomfortable, we would have you scale way back. So maybe you're struggling with the deadlift because you want to be able to pick things up. Well, maybe we limit the range of motion. We don't have you go all the way to the floor, and maybe we use a PVC pipe that weighs nothing, or a really light dumbbell, or something that's manageable. And we only do a couple reps, and then we give you a lot of rest time. And we only progress at a speed and an intensity that is relatively comfortable for you. And then over time, we progressively make things more challenging, and we move you along that east-west line from less optimal to more optimal. But you could take a more advanced athlete, let's say someone who's really good at deadlift, and let's say this is a collegiate athlete and it's in the middle of finals and he hasn't slept well, he hasn't been eating well, he's very stressed out, it's the off season, and we bring him in to lift and he's not focused. Well, that athlete who normally has more optimal technique is going to be less optimal on that given day. So we would have to adjust the intensity, maybe adjust the range of motion, we maybe give him more rest time. We do something to accommodate the fact that the technique isn't as optimal as we would want it to be. But he still trains. That's the thing, is like we still get him in there and get him moving and doing the exercises. And I think for a lot of people, this idea that there is such thing as bad technique, and this fear of bad technique, and this fear that it's going to cause injury, it's not dumb, but you're at greater risk for not moving than you are for moving. And I don't even know, I guess that's my opinion, but I'm pretty sure I could back that up with a ton of research. The risks of being physically inactive are very high. The risks of being physically active and pushing yourself too hard, they exist, but I don't know. I guess you got to pick. You can pick. Now, I would say let's have the best of both worlds. Let's be physically active and let's do it reasonably so that we decrease our risk for pain and injury. I think most people would agree with that. But if you're not moving, I think you're at a greater risk, because we know that routine physical activity has a lot of benefits. Routine physical activity. So I'm talking about taking a bunch of steps, playing sports, doing some strength training, getting your heart rate up. It has the benefit of potentially improving your mood. It can improve your sleep. It can slow the effects of aging. So we're talking about probably putting on more lean muscle mass, maintaining a really good range of motion of your joints. You can decrease your risk for things like heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, stroke. You can decrease your risk for Alzheimer's and dementia. You can boost your memory. You can boost your retention. You can boost your energy levels. You can boost your immune system. So you can lessen your risk of infection. If you get an infection, you can speed up the recovery and maybe even lessen the symptoms. You do all of this by making yourself just more robust. As I said, I think I said you improve energy levels. You have a better life. So sometimes, a lot of times, pain is inevitable. It's a human experience. So it's estimated that, for example, 80% of the population, they're going to deal with low back pain at some point. Very common. So if you've never had low back pain and you're an adult, that's weird. It just is statistically. It's unusual. So if low back pain is the standard, if you're going to go through low back pain at some point in your life, when you go through it, do you want to be fit and healthy and active and getting good sleep and having, you know what I mean, and being very capable? Or do you want to be on the other end of the spectrum? If those were your two choices, what would you pick? I know what I would pick. Now, the interesting thing, let's just stick with the low back pain theme. Some of the best therapies for low back pain involve movement. For example, walking. Well, if I've got someone who comes in and they've got low back pain and I say, look, one of the best things we can do is get you up and get you walking routinely. I want you out of a seated position, out of that static position, and we're going to introduce you to movement gently, and this is going to help on so many different levels. Well, if they're an inactive person and they're not used to walking, well, then I got to deal with ankle pain and foot pain and calf soreness and knee pain because they're not used to taking all those steps. So in that case, which has happened before, people are not fit enough to do some of the best therapy to help their low back pain. And so we run into this situation where if you're going to be injured, if you're going to be sick, we want the bar of health and fitness and capability to be relatively high. Because as you're going through pain and illness, you'll get out of shape and your body's going to take a little bit of a beating, but it's going to bounce back a lot easier than if you start lower. If you're struggling with heart problems and diabetes and obesity and you're sedentary, well, that's a bad spot to start from if you're going to deal with pain or injury. So I think that this person that I was working with, I think he, based on the look on his face, he instantly understood what I was talking about because he's lived it. And I don't want to put him down or make him seem silly for what he said. It's just very common. And so if that's you, if you're out there and you're like, wow, man, there's nothing worse than having bad technique. That's why I don't want to get hurt, but you're not exercising and you're not active because of that fear of injury. I would recommend that you rethink it. And it can be something as simple as just getting on YouTube and finding some YouTube channel that you think is interesting and try it out. Or you can go hire a personal trainer or a strength and conditioning coach, or you can come see someone like me. It's going to have more of a clinical edge to it. So, I mean, you have a lot of options. Or do something that you think is going to be not that strenuous that, you could, there are different levels, for example, of yoga, like different levels of intensity. Go join a yoga class. Or if you're not into yoga, look for some Pilates. Or join a walking group. Or just start walking. You know what I mean? There's not don't overcomplicate it and overthink it. If you're not moving and you're not exercising a lot and we can increase it even a little bit, that's better. And I wouldn't let fear of injury freak you out. And if you have a legitimate concern for injury or you have something going on health-wise that you're like, I don't know, well, go talk to someone about it. Because the risk of not moving is worse than the risk of moving, in my opinion. Now, this gentleman and I, we've had some good conversations. He, I think not on the same day, but in another session, said something that was fascinating to me. We were talking about nutrition and fueling the body. Fueling your body is important. We go to the gym and we work out and we're physically active for the opportunity to recover. And in the recovery process, that's how we get stronger and fitter and healthier. So when we're lifting weights or doing cardio, we're breaking down tissue. We've got to rebuild that tissue, and you rebuild it with what you put in your body, your nutrition. And you rebuild it while you're sleeping for the most part. I mean, you do it while you're awake, but sleep is such a big factor also. So if you're not sleeping well and you're not eating well, and you're going out and you're starting an exercise routine, it's the equivalent of, this is my favorite analogy for this. It's like if we were going to remodel a bathroom and we went out there and I hired a demo crew to come in and demo the whole bathroom, just rip everything out. And then I didn't go out and buy supplies, like no new drywall, no new toilet. I've got nothing basically for the contractor to rebuild it. And I don't give the contractor any time. So we do the demo and I come back the next day and I go, what's going on? Why isn't the bathroom rebuilt? And he's going to be like, one, you didn't give me any time. And two, I don't have any supplies. Like we're not ready for this. So it's only going to be broken down. And I think people don't think about it that way. So this, again, I'm going to give this gentleman a ton of credit because he's asking these questions. Okay, well, how do I fuel my body? Because I'm moving more, I'm exercising more, I'm trying to build muscle mass. What should I be eating? And we were talking about protein and fiber mostly because I think that's the simple way to start. Just looking at, are you eating enough protein? What are your protein sources? And how much fiber are we getting in there? Because I think fiber is just so important for health. And he's looking at weight loss, so protein and fiber. If we're looking at whole food sources of protein and fiber, they tend to be more filling and they have more nutrients. So ideally you're going to eat less. Like for example, it's hard to overeat chicken breasts and apples and broccoli. It's just hard to do it, right? Ton of protein, ton of fiber, ton of nutrients. So trying to shift the diet that way without making it too restricting for him. And he says something to the effect of, yeah, but do you have any tricks for making vegetables actually taste good? And is a funny guy. And I was like, yeah, I do. Because I think roasting vegetables in the oven just changes the game. A little bit of salt on there. Ooh, they get a little crispy. It's nice. And if you've got an air fryer, even better because you don't have to use any oil in an air fryer. So there are a lot of ways that you can make veggies more. I mean, I can say make them tasty. I think they're tasty. Roasted carrots with some salt. Ooh, that's good. It tastes good. And I think there's a lot of, I feel fortunate, I guess, because I like the flavor, but some people don't. And I respect that. But, towards the end of that conversation where I was giving him some tips, because it's what he wanted to know, I was like, incorporating, you understand the benefit of incorporating vegetables into your diet, right? And he goes, yeah, I get it. And I was like, do you understand the risk of not doing it, right? And he was like, yeah, I think I get that. And I was like, so does it really matter what the flavor is to you? I mean, like, if the option was have diabetes and you have your foot amputated, or not have diabetes, not have your foot amputated, but you have to eat bland vegetables every day, would you pick it? Realistically? It's like, yeah, I guess so. So I was like, in that regard, do not let the flavor be the thing that holds you up. Now let's try and make it more flavorful. And I'm not sitting here saying you have to eat vegetables. I'm not going to, because there's probably a lot of like carnivore and keto people out there who are eating very few vegetables, fruits and vegetables, and they're thriving and doing quite well. So I'm just using this as an example. I think there's probably some very good reasons to be on those diets, and I think they can be helpful. For the most part, though, having a diet that's higher in fiber, I just think there's a mountain of evidence to show evidence it's good for you, and that's my opinion. So you don't have to agree with that if you don't want to. That's fine. I think we can all agree though that the whole food sources tend to be better, not because they're like organic or they're whatever. It's because there's less processing, and less processing means less salt, less sugar. It's usually higher in protein. If you're eating plant sources, it's higher in fiber. All of these things are higher in nutrients. They're more filling, so you'll eat less. They nourish your body more without you having to process all these extra calories. And it's just, I just think that most people know that. So I think if you go out there and you talk to a bunch of people who are diabetics, they already know what's going on, and they know what they need to do to change things. And a lot of times people get hung up on this. Well, it doesn't taste good. And it's kind of similar to that. Well, if I have bad technique, I shouldn't be in the gym. It's dangerous. And we tell these things, we say these things in our heads, and they sound logical. And it sounds like, well, that's reasonable. I don't like the flavor. I don't know how I'm going to do this, so I shouldn't do it. I don't have to do it. I'll start tomorrow. But when tomorrow ends up being 10 years later, you've wasted a bunch of time, a bunch of damage is done. So I feel like, this gentleman and I are on the same page. He's working through a lot of things that a lot of people struggle with. And I'm not here to judge people or make people feel bad, but Build Beyond as a podcast and as a clinic exists to challenge people and to guide people so that they can reach their full potential. If I'm not challenging you as a listener, if I'm not challenging you as a patient, if you're one of my patients, or if you're one of my clients, then what am I doing? You know what I mean? But it's not enough just to challenge you. I've got to guide you. And I'm hoping that sharing these stories offers some type of challenge and some type of guidance, because ultimately you decide what your full potential is. But for this gentleman, his full potential is less body fat, more muscle mass, being able to take a knee, being able to lie down and get back up without having to think about it, not having to worry about diabetes, not having to worry about heart disease, living a longer, more fulfilling life, and maybe getting back to sports, getting back to the physical activity that he used to enjoy when he was younger. So that, I think, trying to put words in his mouth, but that's the direction he's going as far as reaching his full potential. That might not be what you think about when you think about reaching your full potential. But whatever it is, there is an excellent solution to the problems that you're facing. The idea would be to identify the excellent solution and then just overwhelm that problem with the excellent solution. So this gentleman, for him, it's complicated. He's got a lot of things going on. There are other healthcare providers involved. As far as my piece of the pie, overwhelming his problem with an excellent solution involves routine physical activity and making some simple but difficult dietary changes, and finding a way to do these in a sustainable way. So it's not enough just to say, just go eat bland vegetables, because that's going to work for a limited amount of time. We do have to ultimately find a way for him to enjoy vegetables. And if he's not going to eat vegetables, we've got to find another solution. Maybe that's not the excellent solution for him. I think it will be, but we can be flexible. I hope this has been helpful. I hope this hits home for some people, and maybe not for you, but maybe I'm describing someone you know. We don't want to have paralysis by analysis. And I think that's a big problem. I'm not going to change my diet until I know what's right, and then what's going to be perfect. And I'm not going to start doing exercise until I have the perfect form, or until it's the right time of year. Guess what? It's never going to be the right time. You're going to have, for most of us, we're going to have a lot of time at some point When we get old and we're retired and maybe we get put in a home, then you have nothing but time. Your day is all free, but that's not where you want to be. I don't want to end up there. I want to be moving and active and with it mentally until someday I just don't wake up. I don't want to be a burden on my family. I want to be able to live on my own until I die, and I want to be able to enjoy my kids and my grandkids and maybe even my great grandkids. And I think a lot of people share those same goals. And in order to do that, you need to challenge yourself. Most of us need guidance. And we really have to define what we want, what our full potential is. And we can't let, what's the saying? We can't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. I think we should always work towards having better technique and refining our diets. But guess what? Guess what we know is good? Eating fewer calories and doing that through whole food sources. So fresh fruits and vegetables. If you can't get fresh fruits and vegetables, canned and frozen fruits and vegetables are awesome. Things like beans, if you can tolerate them. Rice is not the enemy, if you eat it in limited amounts. So we're looking at more natural foods that come from the earth, and then you can cook and you can eat. Protein sources. If you're not into animal protein, getting that plant protein in. And if you have any dietary restrictions, just respecting that and working around it to the best of your ability. We need to be moving. We need to be getting lots of steps in if we can. We need to be strength training and trying to not necessarily get freakishly strong, but at least maintain a relatively high level of strength and capability. We should be able to pick things up and walk and carry them and walk around and not be afraid of tripping and falling. We should be jacking our heart rate up and thinking about cardio. I just don't think any of this stuff is debatable. And most people, if you go ask them, they know it. If I gave them a fill in the blank test, they're going to nail it, but they're not doing it. So we got to look at those barriers. And one of those barriers is this paralysis by analysis. I know I should be doing it, but I don't know if this is right or it's right. If it's right or if it's wrong or what, you know what I mean? We're like overthinking it. Instead of overthinking it, just go. Like, how do I get started? You just take a step. You just go. You know what I mean? You throw away the Oreos. I don't know. And you eat an apple and you do some push-ups and you move on with your day. That might be it. You might wake up tomorrow and be like, man, instead of the Pop-Tart, I'm eating an apple, a couple scrambled eggs, I'm doing some push-ups, and then I'm moving on with my day as I normally would. Great. That's a great way to start. It doesn't really matter how you start. It just matters that you start. And if you need help, reach out and ask. If you live in Michigan, I've got a license to practice in Michigan. I can help you. If you're not in Michigan, you can reach out anyway. We might not be able to help you directly, but maybe I can connect you with someone in your area that can help. All right. I hope this has been useful, and thanks for listening.